So when it comes to just giving and being generous, I think that's a big part of following Jesus as well. It's why a lot of people give gifts at Christmas, is God gave us the gift of eternal life and wants us to just be generous with each other, just as he's generous to us.
Welcome to Retire Smart with David Brooks. I'm Chip Maxwell. Well, David, as we sit down to record this show, we're 1 week away from Christmas. Are you ready?
Absolutely. I don't have to do anything. I have a wonderful wife who handles everything.
This is a man who had 18 people under his roof for Thanksgiving, so hopefully it's not quite that intense.
There'll be three of us on Christmas, and I'm really happy about that. We're not going anywhere, and nobody's coming over.
Well, that sounds really nice, actually. Retire Smart. We've got the 5 red kettles for a few more days for Salvation Army at some West Omaha locations. We had a crew down at the Toy and Joy Shop on Friday, December 20th. This is the Open Door Missions warehouse. Well, they take one corner of the warehouse and they decorate it like a Santa's workshop kind of thing, and some low-income families are able to come through with a cart and fill it up with some gifts for Christmas. That's always a lot of fun. And David, on my way into the studio, your scheduler, your wrangler, Mary, said, be sure and tell David to behave. His pastor's in the house today. Yeah. Bart Wilkins is going to join us in the second segment of the show to talk about the reason for the season. But in the meantime, David, into the news we go. You brought this up during the team meeting this week, and here's a CNBC headline. Bitcoin proxy MicroStrategy to join the NASDAQ 100 and heavily traded QQQ ETF. All right, we got to break down some of the jargon. MicroStrategy's kind of gone from the outhouse to the penthouse, I guess. And this is the latest manifestation.
Well, and I would just tell people a tale of caution. So MicroStrategy has been around for a while. It had a rise in 99, 2000, very similar to the parabolic rise it's going through now, and then went down and stayed in the doldrums for 20 plus years, and now has had this insane rise, and they don't make any money. They've been a publicly traded company for like 24 years and have lost a collective $1.4 billion over that time period. Yet their stock has gone parabolic and is now part of the lofty NASDAQ 100, and the reason this matters is because, as you mentioned, the aforementioned ETF QQQ, that's Invesco's ETF that tracks the top 100 stocks in the NASDAQ. There are other funds that do the same thing, and they are all now going to be required to purchase MicroStrategy, taking it to even higher loft levels because they have to track the index. So they have to own what's in the index. So it's about $1.8 billion will additionally funnel into this stock because of this announcement. And the problem is all this company's doing is creating these convertible bonds. So they're issuing debt, collecting the money, and all they're doing, they're not making any product or service. They're buying Bitcoin. And if Bitcoin goes up, they have the ability now, because of their equity profile, to issue more debt and then lather, rinse, repeat. Well, if Bitcoin goes the other way, and it will at some point, what happens with this house of cards, if you will, and it will come tumbling down. And now that it's part of the NASDAQ 100, it could pull the entire NASDAQ down because of its weighting. So again, a word of caution here. This is a high flyer. You should be really cautious if you happen to own this. We're not making recommendations one way or the other, but this is the stuff that makes me nervous as a fiduciary-based advisor when we look at things that don't make sense.
So I just want to make sure I understand, and our listeners do. So the NASDAQ 100, of course, that's the technology-focused index. This QQQ is a package within an exchange-traded fund, and now MicroStrategy is part of that package?
Correct, yes. Okay. So that basically tracks the top 100 stocks in the NASDAQ. So there's a couple thousand there, but the top 100 are where most of the action is. And anyway, so yeah, just be careful.
David, you sent me something from the website Think Advisor, and the headline was, Death and Retirement Tax Changes Could Add $723 billion in revenue over 10 years. That's according to the Congressional Budget Office. But then the article also talks about, another $22 trillion in deficits over the next 10-year period. What are we seeing here, David?
Well, so this is the cautionary tale, because some people are truly excited that, because of the new administration coming in and there's Republicans in both the Senate and the House, that, we're going to extend the tax cuts forever. They're going to make them permanent, and they're going to abolish the death tax, the estate tax. And I'm just here to put a word of caution. While I would love to see the estate tax go away, I don't think it's constitutional, but the reality is, where are they going to give in? We know he wants to extend the current tax cuts. That's going to add about $4.8 trillion, according to the CBO, in debt between now and the end of the decade, if they were to extend it till 2030.
But you're saying that may preclude any action on the estate tax.
Correct,
and people
because
won't have the nerve
how are you
to go
going
ahead
to
and cut
balance
that.
this out? Now they're going to try to
Because
sell
the numbers
growth,
won't
which I think
work.
will come, and it actually proved when the Tax and Job Act of 17, otherwise known as the Trump tax cuts, got enacted. We actually had more revenue the following 2 years, not less. So the CBO's predictions were wrong there, and I think they could be wrong again. And again, I mentioned almost every week, my buddy Javi down in Argentina, President Javi Milei.
Yeah.
They are going to have about 4% GDP growth there. As I said last week, they achieved the first time in 123 years a fiscal stimulus for that country. Their inflation was running at 23%. It's now at 3%. So if you gut out wasteful spending in the government, which is what they did there, and obviously we have this Doge movement here, you could ignite growth. But I'm telling you, a few eggs will be broken mixing this cake, and there's going to be a lot of disruption, and there's going to be a lot of opportunities for people to lose money if they're not proactive in their risk management strategies.
Before we leave this topic, let me just ask you, we've got Project 2025, the Heritage Foundation formula for moving back toward limited government. There was an attempt to actually demonize that during the campaign. That didn't really get traction.
Well, you got a great point. They should have just owned it. Hey, we didn't write it, but we sure like a lot of what's in it, right?
Well, so my question, because Republicans have been promising that for decades. Now we've got Trump's proposed Department of Government Efficiency, Elon Musk and Vivek Ramaswamy out in front on that. Maybe that's his version of Project 2025. Will any of this happen, do you think, is what I'm wondering? Because that would certainly help the numbers for these kinds of calculations.
Yeah, I do believe you're going to see some things. Now, how fast, how hard do they go? And the reality is the faster they go, the more likely they're going to be able to cut more. The longer it takes, the less likely it is. And of course, this week, as we're sitting here recording this, we're recording this on a Wednesday morning. We have a CR resolution, a continuing resolution sitting before the House, which has about 1,500 pages of pork in it. And all these folks that just ran on this election, we're going to cut the fat, they're about to vote. Well, not in my district, Chip. I need this money for this project, or we want to study if pigs can fly when monkeys are on their back. Oh, no, they can't, but we wasted $1 billion study. I mean, it's insane when you start to look into the, what's in there. And you have about 12 Republican senators calling people out publicly now. And that's the other thing, too, is now you can shame people into, the voices of people on social media, et cetera. They are challenging their congressman. Interesting as well, and it's off topic real quick. I don't have time, but we had a Democratic senator now propose term limits for the Supreme Court, but not for themselves, right? So I think the American public is tired of lifetime politicians. I don't like that we vote for our senators. I think it should be the way the Constitution was set up. The state legislature should pick your senators.
That is true.
And the state should pay for your senators and all their office staff. It should have nothing to do with the federal budget or your and I taxes on a federal level.
David, we have been talking in recent weeks about people actually traveling on foot, getting in their cars, taking mass transit, and going to stores, going to shopping malls again, not just sitting in front of the computer screen and clicking buttons to do their shopping. And this was kind of an intriguing headline from CNBC. Gen Z to the rescue? How malls are winning over a generation of in-person shoppers. And the mall, David, as opposed to one giant superstore where it's all under one roof, there's one young person quoted in this story saying, I like it. It feels like I'm going to a small town, and there's interaction with other humans. I do it with my mom or my aunt. It's also social time, relationship time for me. Are the malls making a comeback, David?
They are, but they're going to make it in a different way. In other words, what goes around comes around, right? Bell bottoms come into style,
Okay.
and 35 years later they come back, etc. Some people wear ugly slippers, and amazingly, 30 years from now they might come back in style. That was a shot at our guest coming up, but anyway. So I will tell you what it is they want different design malls. Actually, some friends of mine bought a mall down in Topeka, Kansas, are completely redeveloping it, but they do. Their traffic is Gen Z, not millennials, right? Boomers like shopping in malls. My wife, doesn't understand why, all these mega stores. She would rather be able to walk to 8 or 9 different stores, different feel, different, culture in the store. And so you get different ideas, and it's fun shopping. And so Gen Z, again, the millennials became all online shoppers, and they primarily, because that's how they've been trained, will stay that way. But the generation behind them, culture shifts. And so stores that adapt, and we talked about it last week, stores are setting up but smaller footprints. You don't maybe need as large of a store, so less square foot, so you can afford to put the store up.
They're adding some amenities too.
Yeah, absolutely. And well, I mean, I can just tell you, even the way grocery stores design now, like my brother Lou, who's our compliance officer, who's in Omaha for a part of his time, and he lives in Northern Virginia the rest of the time. They have a grocery store there called Wegmans, but we don't have it here. We didn't have it in the South where I live. It's an amazing experience for him. It's just going to the grocery store. Now, like Hy-Vees out here are designing similar concepts where you go in the new state-of-the-art Hy-Vee out by Gretna near where I live, and there's 7 different restaurants in there. There's a full bar if you want to take part in it, but it's an experience now, so it's not just going to buy the product. And so companies are adapting to the shifting behaviors of their consumer, and that's a good thing, but what you want to see is innovation lead the way, and we don't need tax credits to build a mall.
Up next, his daughter is our finance director at Retire Smart. His church's communications specialist is our high-tech specialist, helping to produce this show. And David Brooks is part of his church. Lead pastor Bart Wilkins of Flatland Church joins us next on Retire Smart with David Brooks. Welcome back to Retire Smart with David Brooks. I'm Chip Maxwell. Christmas approaches. Here to visit with us about the reason for the season is a devoted servant of the Lord who has numerous ties to Retire Smart. David, please welcome our special guest, lead pastor Bart Wilkins of Flatland Church.
All right, thank you, Chip. Yes, in the studio is my resident authority on all things about Jesus, my pastor, who I never call him pastor, we just call him Bart.
There you go.
Bart Wilkins, thank you for taking time to stop in our studio.
My pleasure.
So,
it's good to be here.
It's funny is we were chatting before we went on air, is I actually bumped into you, met you because of Chip Maxwell when Chip was working on a local radio station that I sponsored the morning show and would go in there and do often their Friday morning show at like 6 a.m. And you were doing a show in the studio next door. In fact, I sat there and watched you and a gentleman named Hook, Walt Hooker, a pastor, I think, from the south side of town here. But anyway, and after listening to you a couple times, you're like, well, come check out our church. And I walked in your doors, close to 8 years ago now, and
been a while.
Been attending ever since. So anyway, so I just wanted to have you on. Tis the season. Jesus is the reason for the season. Mm-hmm. It's Christmas. So I just thought it'd be nice to have maybe a pastoral point of view of talking about what Christmas really means. And you've been doing a series at church kind of along this thing. So just kind of tell our audience what the real reason of Christmas is, because there's a lot of listeners out there that are probably not attending service weekly, and that's okay, but we always like to let people know what it's like to attend if they've never attended, or it's a very welcoming place. And not only Flatland, which is your church,
mm-hmm.
but there's so many other houses of worship that have the doors open this Christmas holiday season. So.
Absolutely. Great churches all over the city. Really, there are. And I think really to answer your question, what's Jesus all about? What's the reason for this season? Christmas is the time of year that we celebrate the gift of God. He gave Jesus, his son, to the world in order to save us. And so when Jesus came to this earth, he came as a baby, grew up. It's a wild story if you've never heard it. Some people have never really heard the story of Jesus, but it's amazing. It's incredible. Some people grew up with it, so it's all like old hat. But it really is the story of God giving his son in order to come, grow up, become the king of the world, and establish his kingdom. And it's God's gift to humanity who failed, who we've fallen short. We haven't always gotten it right. But he made a way for us to be made right in him. So there's a lot to that, which is why churches meet every week. I mean, there's a lot. But
well, no, when I met you, we were just talking about you did a show called "Move to the Center,"
yes,
right? I think it was the title.
Wasn't a political show.
No.
Being
And
center.
literally, when I listened to that, I was like, "Man, this is a pastor.
Yeah,
he wants
what
me
in
to be
the
in the
world?
center.
Yeah,
Wait,
no.
what? No,
if
but-
Jesus is at the center, how do we move closer to him?
Right.
That was the whole gist of the show.
Well,
Yep.
and you do. I think you've changed the name since I went, but you do this. I think it's like a 6-week course. I don't remember how long it was, but the initiation course. Like if you start attending regularly and you want to kind of find out
Flatland 101.
101
is
or
what
whatever
we
you call it now.
Yep.
It was a different name
and
when
we
I
talk
attended.
about moving to the center.
Yeah,
there.
but you do. You kind of draw your little circle on the board
Yep.
and talk
Yep.
about that. And I always think that's fun because I'm a data hound, and so I like to challenge people on theology and certain points
Yep.
and things like that. But one of the things I always think is amazing with you is you're always willing to have dialogue with somebody, even if you
Totally.
want to challenge a point biblically or what have you. But I like the way that you just simply tell stories from the Bible. Give a scripture that we're going into every week during our service. Just for those that don't know, some services are different than others, but
Yeah,
I always
yeah.
say go where you're being fed. That's kind of
right,
my advice to
yeah.
anybody. If you feel fed when you're in a service, that's probably a pretty good spot for you to be. But I always feel fed coming out. In fact, you're the one that gets me. I've had 2 pastors in 40 years of going to church that have kind of made me want to go do research between. Just don't go to Sunday, right?
Right,
Actually,
yeah. Do
start
something
reading
with
the
it.
Bible. Yeah, do something with it. And so I love that gift that you have to help people want to connect and go dig and learn more on each of the stories, et cetera. So,
Yeah,
so
yeah,
you
thank
got
you.
a gift.
Thank you. Yeah, speaking of the story, I looked up the verse of the day. I don't know if you remember my old radio show. I used to do the word of the day, the national day, and the verse of the day today. If you don't mind, can I just read it real quick?
Please.
It is out of the book of Isaiah in the Bible, Isaiah 9:6, and it just says, "For to us a child is born, to us a son is given." There's that gift from God. "And the government will be on his shoulders, and he will be called Wonderful Counselor, Mighty God, Everlasting Father, Prince of Peace." And there's so much just wrapped up in that one verse. I could probably get you
Yeah.
excited about it this week of diving in and digging in, because really the whole gospel is wrapped up in there, and God himself, Father, Son, and Spirit is wrapped up right in that verse. It's amazing. Just one verse about how God gave us himself in order for us to know him better. It's amazing.
I can tell you one of the things I enjoy from your teaching on not just this time of year and the gift is the chronological way the Bible has laid out.
Oh, yeah.
What's so amazing to me is my wife grew up in Southern Devout Baptist home. Her dad was a gospel quartet singer traveling. They were extremely learned, and I was in what I call the C&E Catholic home. We were the casual Christmas and Easter,
Yeah, yeah.
and it was a little more formality than it was relationship, just in where we went. And my grandmother would make sure we'd go to midnight mass though on Christmas, things
Right.
like that. But we didn't really get into, at least in my education as a younger man, how this lays out. And so I think it's fascinating. And the cool thing is today is production value, and studios now, independent studios, are making so many high quality content on the life of Jesus, right?
Yes,
Yes.
yes.
From movies to series, Chosen, et cetera. In fact, one of our clients is in the series Chosen.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, and as extras. So, but anyway, I just think it's amazing. New formats are coming out to spread the word, et cetera. You guys even broadcast your services on Twitch, of all places, right? And thanks to Shannon right over there, actually
That's
helps
right,
make that
that's
work, our
right.
producer. And I'm like, Twitch? That's where my kids go streaming games on. So,
Yeah.
hey, you're moving forward. I love that. And you're moving to the center.
There you go. Exactly. Yeah, so when it comes to just giving and being generous, I think that's a big part of following Jesus as well. It's why a lot of people give gifts at Christmas, is God gave us the gift of eternal life and wants us to just be generous with each other, just as he's generous to us. And so, gift giving is a big part of it. Some people go way overboard, go into debt. You don't want to see that.
No.
Sometimes just giving yourself to someone in just simple ways of being a blessing is the best gift to give. And so that's one thing I would just challenge everyone this Christmas is just, are you being generous to others? Are you being generous with your time and your life, of just your presence, being a blessing to other people? You don't even have to spend a whole lot of money to do that.
No, absolutely.
Yeah.
I also think, too, sometimes, sadly, the holidays can be a very difficult time for those that have
Absolutely.
lost a loved one, they're alone for the
Yes.
first time. It can just bring back memories. And so that's why I think so many houses of worship opening their doors, getting into some fellowship, that you just lift the spirits. And for me, I love the music.
Yep.
Well performed music is awesome. And full disclosure there, so Bart's one of his children is one of our employees, Abby, and she actually is one of the singers at our church. And so, of course, I keep picking them off. We now have we brought another employee.
Couple people, a couple people
So
here.
we're now recruiting a pair apparently out of Flatland.
I try
Church
to raise them up
employees.
for you,
Yeah,
so the
we
business
appreciate
world
that.
can have some great people.
Well, thanks for the gifts. We're
You're
in the giving
welcome.
season.
You're welcome. Exactly.
All right, so tell me about you and Jen. Do you guys have tradition that is just what you personally do for Christmas? What do you, like when the kids were younger? Yours are kind of all out of the house. You've got them married now, but did you guys let them open a gift Christmas Eve? Were you Christmas morning only? What's your tradition?
Yeah,
then?
we were kind of those bad gift giver people. We would open them all the way up until Christmas. Here's a present today, maybe next week, So,
No
but
suspense.
we did
Wow.
our big. I know, not a lot. Although we did do Christmas stockings on Christmas morning. That was a deal for us. And then I got myself into trouble way early on because when my kids were little, I wrapped all of the little gifts in my wife's stocking. I wrapped every single one of them. And now I've had to do that every year since. So that's one of our traditions. I wrap, I don't even know, whatever, 10, 12 things.
Be careful
are in
the
stocking.
expectation you set early. So for any of you
Exactly.
that are newly married, maybe your first Christmas together,
Yeah,
you're
just-
excited, you want to show how much you love your new spouse.
Right.
Don't go overboard. You'll
might
have to
be
keep those
stuck doing
standards
that
up.
for generations or for decades. Exactly. Yeah. So that's one thing. We actually fondue for Christmas.
Okay.
That's another tradition that we have. So I don't even know exactly how that started, but we've got a lot of fondue stories. So.
Now, does everyone still come over to your house? Do the grandkids come over? Or
We either come to our house. Sometimes we do our house, and then my wife's parents live here in town, and we go to their house as well. And then my daughters are married, so there's all their families trying to figure that out. So it's just trying to figure out when and where we're going to get together.
Yeah, well, I think that's the key is just get together, right?
That's
have some
the big
fellowship,
thing.
have some time together,
Definitely.
and reflect on the season. And so I think that's awesome. So tell everyone about at Flatland. You're going to have 2 services on Christmas Eve.
Yes, that is correct. 3:30 and 5 p.m. They're roughly 1-hour services full of music. We tell the Christmas story. And so 3:30 and 5 on Christmas Eve.
And where is Flatland Church?
We are at 144th and Larimore. That's between Maple and Fort on 144th Street, Northwest Omaha.
Well, we are out of time for the segment. Thank you for blessing our audience with your presence, and have a very Merry Christmas.
Thank you. Thanks for having me on.
All right, Chip, what do we have next?
Up next, you have questions. David Brooks has answers. Q&A is next on Retire Smart with David Brooks. Welcome back to Retire Smart with David Brooks. I'm Chip Maxwell. Into the Q&A we go, David. The first question is about the state legislature. Well, this is from our friend, the affectionately nicknamed Rotten Ralph, self-nicknamed, by the way, client and faithful listener. And his question this week, David, is, after the last election, were enough seats flipped in the unicameral to solve the blue dot and property tax relief problems?
Well, I think the blue dot is still the blue dot, and the blue dot really actually refers more to federal elections, right? Because
True.
it's our electoral vote that goes the way of the blue side versus the red side with the rest of the
The
state.
second district electoral vote,
Yeah.
yes.
However, in the state races, right? Basically, you need 33 votes in our unicameral of 49. I mean, there's 49 legislators,
Correct.
right? And you need 33 to be able to kind of move the needle. It looks like it's about the same as it was. A couple wins and a couple losses happened there, Republican versus Democrat. So I don't unfortunately see a lot of proactive moving. I will tell you, the biggest thing that puts pressure on our legislature, and it seems to be a history, and I love to study history, is Nebraska is 4 to 6 years behind all the states that surround us. All the bordering states take action and get ahead of us, and then we play catch up for 6 to 8 years. But unfortunately, that doesn't slow the exodus. Like, literally met yesterday with clients that are now over in Council Bluffs, because they do not have to pay tax on retirement distributions, pension income, IRA distributions, Roth conversions, et cetera. That is a huge advantage for the state of Iowa. And Iowa's got 4 million people. We've got less than 2 million. We need to be fighting back. We want to get people to come to our side of the river.
My brother, our client here at Retire Smart, he moved across the river to Iowa. It was
we've had several
reasons.
clients, and as a fiduciary, it's our job to point out, hey, let me explain what it looks like, because some people ask, would I be better off living in Iowa? I was like, well, healthcare is going to be slightly different, but let me show you what the tax bill is, and it's significantly different. So it is a concern, but unfortunately, Ralph, it did not move positive. Now, my seat flipped positively, where my representative, now I have Bob Anderson representing me, where it was Jen Day prior, and so Bob will be very proactive and pretty vocal, I think. But it's simply going to take enough pressure from the consumer, period. And again, I think we're in a different phase this go around with the legislature. There is pressure from from the constituents, regardless of party. I cannot continue to pay 26% a year increases in my homeowner's insurance and 15 to 18% increases in my property taxes. It simply can't happen. And so you're going to have enough people revolt that they're going to have to take some kind of action.
I thought we were going to pick one up in my district in Bellevue, David, where I live. Carol Blood has been my state senator, and she was term limited out, but the Republican narrowly lost in that race. And so you're right. Really, it kind of looks like a wash this cycle. Sorry to have to tell you that, Ralph, but we'll see what transpires after the first of the year. On to the next question, David. This is about taxes and specifically Roth accounts. From what I can tell, you hate taxes as much as I do, but I often hear you advocate a Roth account, which requires us to pay taxes on contributions. Why would I let the government shrink the amount of money going into my retirement account?
Okay, let's kind of break this down. So number one, if you take home pay, you've already paid payroll taxes and income taxes through payroll deductions. That money is now sitting in your checking account. If you choose to make a contribution to a Roth IRA, you pay not one dime more in tax. You've already paid the tax on that money. However, you're allowed to make a contribution into that account up to the limit, and if you're over 50, you get a catch-up contribution. Those dollars, if you follow all the rules, there's two primary rules. You have to have an account in existence 5 years, and you have to be 59 and a half before you touch the money. If you follow those two rules, those dollars will never be taxed. On top of that, under the new legislative changes through what's called the Secure Act 2.0 2 years ago, if you don't need the money, and many of our clients don't need the money in the Roth IRA, you can let your kids inherit that Roth IRA. They can keep it in the Roth for another 10 full calendar years, effectively potentially doubling that again if it earned like a 7.2% rate of return, and take the entire balance out that final year 100% tax-free. Now, that's an individual Roth account. To the questioner's other question, if they're doing it through payroll deduction, through the 401k or the 403b, and they allow a Roth contribution, you are correct. You're going to pay taxes and then contribute that money in there. But once again, $37 trillion in debt as we sit here. If you're going to be retiring 7 years from now, 10 years from now, 20 years from now, do you really believe tax rates will be lower at that point in time or higher? And you can answer that question. Now, I will show you history. If you come see us in the office, we'll show you the 111-year history of income taxes. That's how long we've had them. And I'll show you the average top bracket, which is 37 today. The average for the 111 years, and most people are really surprised to hear, is over 63%. That's the average top bracket.
It's relatively low. People are sometimes surprised to hear that, but it's relatively very low right now.
It's extremely low, and our country has got to get the genie back in the bottle with the debt situation. So I believe that taxes will increase, especially on those with means in the future. So why not prepay those taxes today? And again, there's arguments we have, certain clients, it's not the right move. It's not 100%, but you are right. I hate pay taxes as much as you do.
Well, generally, I've heard you say it numerous times, David, better to pay tax on the seed than on the harvest.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And a bird in hand is worth two in the bush, the old expression, right? You know what the tax liability is today, so you can pay it, and you never have a tax on those particular assets again, where you are maybe going to get a better deal in the future or less. And again, we were all told this crazy myth, oh, you should defer. You'll be in a lower tax bracket when you're retired. And again, for me, in my career, over a quarter century doing this, that's true for 4% of the population. So it's a complete myth.
David, here's an unusual question, a little out of our usual fare here. It's about a suspicious death that occurred recently. I have heard you talk about OpenAI. It's artificial intelligence, of course. A guy who left OpenAI and became a whistleblower on ChatGPT was found dead in his San Francisco apartment. The official ruling was suicide. Was this a troubled young man, or do we have a conspiracy theory brewing?
Well, I don't know if you might be watching the show that just ended called Yellowstone. we had an incident like that with the main character here a few episodes back. But yeah, it is very suspicious. My son's one actually brought that story to my attention because here's the thing. Sam Altman, who's kind of the leader of OpenAI, and if you're not familiar, OpenAI is the largest AI platform. They run the popular ChatGPT, which a lot of people seem to use. There's multiple forms of AI out there. However, he's like, oh, I'm doing this for nothing. Well, he's taking a $10 billion payout now, and all of a sudden getting the company revalued, and greed is stepping up. There are several whistleblowers that were trying to give information out, and this particular person let some information out, and lo and behold, 3 weeks later is no longer with us. So, yeah, it's very suspicious. Again, I don't have any evidence or anything like that, but it's scary when you're talking about dollar amounts in the amount we're talking about. Things happen, and the biggest thing that shocked me was they took a poll on X or Twitter on the CEO of United Healthcare that was assassinated right on the streets in Manhattan.
Yeah.
And literally 26% of those under 30 were okay with it.
Oh, no.
Or excuse me, 26% of those under 40 were okay with it. 48% were okay with under 30. That is a sad state of affairs, folks. Look, I get it. You think these people are evil companies. Murder is not the answer. And so it's scary times right now. But, what's different today is, I think Elon Musk kind of quoted it, you are the media, right? Now with social media, the world quickly fabricates the story and gets information out there. And that's why I think X is so great, because you get all sides of a story very quickly. You have to take your time to go through it. But, I get a ton of information off that platform.
Up next, another major residential project is coming to downtown Omaha. We'll tell you about it next on Retire Smart with David Brooks. Welcome back to Retire Smart with David Brooks. I'm Chip Maxwell. Well, David, I do want to get to that downtown development project in Omaha, but first we need to squeeze this in because I know you find this very important because there's been this ongoing debate. Inflation, that's over. That's in the rearview mirror. But you sent the team some data in a chart that says otherwise.
Yeah, so inflation is actually hotter right now than it's been since February of 2023. So we're going back almost 2 full years here. And for those of you that are watching on YouTube, you can see clearly on this graph that inflation is trending up, not down. And for now, so we now have CPI trending up 3 months in a row, PPI trending up 3 months in a row. So that's the consumer price index and the producer price index. And the producer price index is a leading indicator because that's the inputs that go into the things we consume of CPI, which is a lagging indicator. And then you also have the Fed's kind of favorite gauge called PCE, which is personal consumption expenditures that they really kind of monitor. That is trending up. Now, what's interesting is you go back to February of 2023 and the Fed said, well, we're really focused on what's called super core inflation. This is the sticky stuff. And because that was at 5.4% and they got it down, that is now trending up north of 4.5%, and the Fed is silent. Oh, when someone asks them, hey, what about that sticky super core? Don't ask that question, please. Next. And so here we are Wednesday. They're going to cut rates this afternoon, 98% probability as of the recording, so I'm assuming they cut another 25 basis points. But the 10-year is up 100 basis points since they started this rate cutting cycle back in September. So the bond market is giving the proverbial middle finger, to the Fed, saying, no, you're wrong. And that's what you need to pay attention to, because if inflation is not under control, that could become a very, very scary thing. Now, what does the Fed know? Why are they so aggressively still willing to cut rates in light of this inflationary data? Well, because they see jobs deteriorating at an accelerated rate. We just got revised numbers out, Chip, this week. So we are now over 1.04 million jobs net lost this year. Net loss. We've lost 1 million jobs in America. Now that the election's over, all of a sudden we're getting the real data out, and it's amazing. Oh, wait a minute. We didn't gain any of those jobs. Sorry, we had the wrong numbers. Over 1 million jobs have been lost, and that's accelerating going into next year, which tells you this rolling recession I think we've been in is a very real thing.
Well, we'll keep an eye on all of that. Now, David, to the downtown Omaha project. The Omaha World Herald headline is, one of Omaha's tallest buildings set to be converted to downtown apartments. This got your attention, David. Why?
Well, we're starting to see this happen in other cities around the country. And I think it's actually a really good thing, right? Because you have these older office buildings that are not designed like today's modern offices. So to go and restructure them inside, I mean, like we spent a ton of money in our office when we came in here. I mean, and now with the studio, over $1 million in improvement just to improve the office that we are in. And so to do that, to get economic activity, not many people want to work downtown, or if they do, they don't want to commute. So having more viable alternatives to live downtown, which Omaha's done a great job, a lot of lofts and apartments going up. So, but the big building, banks don't typically need 22-story buildings anymore, and so they would rather disperse a lot of their folks would rather work at smaller offices out in the suburbs.
This is the First National Bank building that predated the First National Tower. So this is the bank building with the restaurant with the press club at the top of it.
Yeah, and so basically they're going to convert this into about 300 apartments, and I think it's a neat and good thing. And especially you've got if Mutual of Omaha gets their tower completed and goes back to more of a at work, which we think is most companies are doing that here in the very near future if they haven't already, then people are going to want to have locations close and viable to work, and so that may be very vibrant for our downtown, et cetera. But this is neat. I think the company's called New Style that's doing the development here.
Yes, Todd Heisten and New Style. Yeah, they've been active in these kinds of projects.
We're seeing these projects go in other cities as well, and they're being well thought after. So I'm curious what those units will go for, if they're going to be apartments or they're going to condo and sell some of them, and some just all be leases. I didn't get into the details, but I think having a rent that is affordable and multiple locations like that will help keep rent prices down as well. That was the one complaint I had with a client that I was chatting with that lives down there, whatever you call the Capital District, right? And like, it's really nice. It's convenient for me for work, and he actually works at Creighton, and I can walk and et cetera. Yeah. It's quite expensive, relative to if I lived out in the suburbs. So I think the more of these units that get built, obviously the better the pricing will be because of competition.
So it sounds to me like you're bullish on this project, though.
I am. I think that's a great use of an older building that's going to get retrofitted, et cetera. And so the shell is there, and then of course they're just going to completely reconfigure each floor, some plumbing and obviously electrical changes, those type of things.
I got to tell you, as a lifetime Omahan, to see this happening, it was the 1990s, David, when Hal Dobb, in fact, Hal's been on our show before.
Yes, we've had Hal on here a couple times.
Was mayor, and Omaha, like a lot of cities nationally, the urban core of the city was kind of drying up downtown. All the action was radiating out, toward the perimeter. And it was Hal Dobb who said, no, we cannot neglect the core, the downtown. That's the heartbeat of your city. And he initiated riverfront development and so forth, a lot of downtown development. And wow, we've just seen successive waves of it. And here's another one. And I'm glad to hear that you're bullish on it. It sounds like it's working as intended.
We have a similar project, 2 big office buildings downtown Orlando. So I started my career at a company called Payne Weber in downtown Orlando, right? And so I was on the 13th floor of what we used to call the Copper Building. It was PNC Bank was the brand that had the name rights on the building. But major office, actually, in fact, the largest law firm in the country was the floor above us. It was called Morgan, Collin & Gilbert. Now they're just Morgan & Morgan. Now you may see his name on TV everywhere, but we used to get in the elevator with him every day. But anyway, the building next door is now, the same thing happened about 4 years ago, and a friend of mine lives in that building. Now, they made it condos, not apartments, so they sold them, but he has a firm similar to ours in the Orlando market, and he literally lives one building away from his office, and he loves the convenience. So it's a neat way to get economic activity to stay in an area that you already have all the infrastructure and things in place.
Well, David, this next story has blooper reel written all over it, compliance alerts. And I thought, when you sent this, okay, this is the Onion, this is the Babylon Bee or something. It is not. Your comment was the air may literally come out of this one soon. What index is this that we're talking about, David?
So this is a cryptocurrency that is the #1 moving asset since the election, and it went parabolic. It's up like 1,800%.
I can't do it. I can't say it.
It's a cryptocurrency called fart coin.
Thank you.
And that's why I literally said the air is probably going to come out of this one. But
Oh,
this
my
is,
goodness.
and I warned, I was like, this is the problem: is these meme cryptocurrencies don't have any real value. These coins that are just created and fly up. I would not be a holder of this, literally, because when the proverbial wind goes, this will flow down, and it will not be. It might look like something different.
But these numbers, these are real numbers.
Yeah,
I'm
and
looking
people are
at.
really making money and losing money in this. And again, this is this meme kind of thing. We have young people trading online with these apps and things. They have no understanding of the amount of money they're winning or losing and risking, and it is very scary. And that's not what we do here. I want a disclosure. We work with people at or close to retirement that have worked to get their nest egg. We want to protect it, save it, and invest it properly.
All right, well, let's move on. David, you also sent the team, well, you shared an observation, all right? You said that over the past 2 years, the S&P 500 has increased more than 60%, but S&P 500 earnings have increased only about 5%. Why? How do we account for that disparity?
So what happens is we have periods of time we're willing to pay more for a company than less, right? And we do what's called an earnings multiple chip. So in other words, how many times earnings are we willing to pay for a company? Historically speaking, when it comes to the S&P 500, about 17 times earnings is what we're comfortable paying. We are currently paying about 28 times earnings if we buy the market today. And as I said, so the stock, we've increased the multiple, so the stock prices keep going up, making all-time highs, but the earnings are not going to match. So at some point, everything reverts to the mean. And we've got, 150 years of data to prove. So I just mine this information because you know me, I'm just a data hound and I go looking for these anomalies. By the way, as we're recording this today, the Dow was up when we started the recording this morning. I have no idea where it's going to finish today, but the previous 9 days, we've had 9 consecutive negative days on the Dow. That has not happened since 1978. So we are probably closer to the end of this bull run than some might want to think. And so again, the word is heed caution.
That'll do it for this week, folks. Please visit our events page at retiresmartomaha.com to see everything that we currently offer and what we'll be offering in the new year. There's no charge, no obligation for our events, but you do need to register. You can do that online or by calling 402-369-7777. David, bring us home.
God bless, and may you and your families have a blessed and Merry Christmas. And remember, Jesus is the reason for the season. Happy New Year. We'll talk to you soon.
Thank you for listening to Retire Smart with David Brooks. I'm Chip Maxwell. For David Brooks and the entire team at Retire Smart, have a great week, including a Merry Christmas. Bart Wilkins and Flatland Church are not clients of, nor are they affiliated with Retire Smart, and were not compensated for his appearance or any implied endorsement. However, Flatland Church is a nonprofit 501c3 organization, and Retire Smart CEO David Brooks and a few other employees attend and make charitable donations to the church.